This video features the animated short Bring Out Your Logs, followed by commentary from Gula about the role of threat intelligence in today's cyber ecosystem.
I am so tired from integrating threat feeds with my tip, my SOAR, my SEAM, and my EDR. Oh look, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I think I will watch a bit before.
Malware! Malware!
Malware!
Malware!
We have found malware.
Incident response.
Call the SEC!
Begin the reverse engineering.
How do you know he is malware?
His hash was on Virus Total.
I'm not malware. I'm a legitimate application.
But your hash is on Virus Total.
They submitted the hash and said I was malware.
No, we didn't. No.
And this isn't an IP address I connected to. It's a false positive.
Well,
We did connect to that IP. It was Chinese.
the IP?
And the domain name too. But he is malware! Malware! Malware!
Did he really connect to those indicators of compromise?
No. Yes, a bit.
He has got a TTP I read about in a blog.
What makes you think he is malware?
Well, he crashed my computer.
He crashed it?
It ran better after I rebooted. Malware! Malware!
Quiet! There are ways of telling whether he is malware.
There.
What are they?
Tell me, what do you do with systems with malware?
Reinstall.
Reinstall! Reinstall!
And what else can you reinstall apart from systems with malware?
More malware.
Windows.
So, why do we reinstall systems with malware?
Bull. Because we can't trust Windows after it's infected.
Good. So, how do we tell whether he is malware?
Put him in a sandbox and watch!
Ah, but can you not also put good software in a sandbox?
Oh, yeah.
Does a pen test use malware?
No.
Good software! All good software!
Let's do a pen test.
Pen test.
What also has a penetration test?
Vulnerability scanning.
Attack surface analysis!
Very small red teams.
RSA.
Metasploit.
Web app assessments.
Consultants!
A compliance audit.
Wow!
That's good.
Exactly. So, logically,
If the Windows pen test is positive, he's not compliant.
and therefore,
Malware! Malware! Malware!
we shall use the Cybersecurity Maturity Measurement Certification.
Consult the Book of Cyber Compliances.
Compliance, CMMC, Level 3 DIB CAC.
And St. Inglis raised the C3PAO compliance audit up on high, saying, "O Lord, bless this thy compliance, the audit, that with it thou mayest keep thy China and Russia out of our data and their IOCs away from our shores, and commercial applications with authority to operate even large."
Skip a bit, brother.
And the Lord spake, saying, "First thou shalt choose a CMMC compliance level. The highest is 3, no more, no less. 3 shalt be the highest level thou shalt be compliant with, and the number of the highest compliance shalt be 3. 4 thou shalt not count. nor either be compliant with 2, accepting that thou then proceed to 3. 5 is right out. Once the number 3, being the third number, be reached, then thou be in the most holy state of compliance in thy foes, who being naughty in my sight, shall not snuff any data to Russia or China via known indicators of compromise.
Amen.
Amen.
What compliance level hast thou most recently achieved?
Malware.
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 Begin the reverse engineering.
I need to take a shower and rinse of these indicators of compromise before I head back into work.
Hi there, it's Ron Gula from Gula Tech Adventures, and this week we're going to talk about threat intelligence. Now, I've covered this before, but I'm going to cover a couple different angles. I'm going to look at this from the point of view from the technology, what you can and can't do with this kind of information. We're going to talk about using threat information to prioritize your defenses. We're going to talk about how this threat intelligence is actually created. And finally, we're going to talk about my view on this as an investor investing in threat companies. I'm going to feature Threader and Gray Noise heavily. There are the 2 companies in the Gula Tech portfolio right now that are really focused at different sides of the food chain here. But before we get into that, I get a lot of questions about the videos. I hope you really enjoyed Bring Out Your Logs. Now, I use a technology called Replicant, and I've had a lot of people ask me, how do I make the videos? What tech do I use? Now, if you want to play with Replicant, but you don't want to go full in with an animator, being an animator, they actually just shipped something called Replicant Chat. Replicant Chat's available on Steam. They're actually working on a version for mobile devices. But basically with Replicant Chat, what you can do is you can interact with a whole variety of avatars, do quiz shows, and basically, while you're talking to them, things are happening, right? They're querying ChatGPT and all the ChatGPT and all the AIs basically to generate this really, really rich content. So just to kind of kick this off, I asked some of the avatars some threat intelligence jokes. Let's see what happened. Should you take threat intelligence to be your sole driver for your cybersecurity program?
An excellent cybersecurity debate topic. Please share your perspective first. Do you believe threat intelligence should be the primary driver of cybersecurity programs? I'm particularly eager to hear your reasoning on this. Remember, in this debate hall, we must take clear opposing stances.
You should always build your security program around threats and not rely on compliance frameworks, because if you had no threats, you would not have to worry about security.
Ha! That's where you're completely wrong. Focusing solely on threats is like trying to predict where lightning will strike while ignoring the basic need for a lightning rod. Let me demolish that argument. First, threats are constantly evolving and unpredictable. Building your entire security program around them is like constructing a house on quicksand. You need a robust foundation of security controls before you even consider threats. What about basic security hygiene, access controls, asset management? These aren't threat-driven. They're fundamental best practices. Would you build a house without a foundation just because no one is currently trying to break in? That's essentially what you're suggesting.
For punishment, ready for another round of verbal annihilation.
Tell me a joke about the CrowdStrike outage caused in 2024.
Oh, you want to talk about CrowdStrike, the company that couldn't strike while the iron was hot? Let me tell you something about that outage. It was like watching a security guard fall asleep at a bank vault.
Was there actually a crowd striking? Like with picket signs and stuff?
No, you magnificent specimen of mental vacancy. The irony of a cybersecurity company having a security incident is like...
What's he saying about iron? Is this about ironing clothes?
Would you both just... You know what CrowdStrike and my ex-wife have in common? They both promised protection, but left everything exposed. I swear, explaining jokes to you is like trying to teach calculus to a potato.
All right, I hope you enjoy that. And again, now look, full disclosure, we did invest in this company. I really enjoy that. It's really outside sort of the cyber and national security work we do at Gula Tech, but I really enjoy making these videos and it's getting an audience. All right, so having said that, threat intelligence. The first thing I said we're going to talk about is the technology. There's a lot of things going on with the technology. One of the things is that how do I describe the threat intelligence? Right? If I know that there's a bad guy website out there, if I know there's a bad guy malware, bad guy infrastructure, how do I describe that? And can I get that to my customers, in time for them to do something with it? Well, one of the limitations is how we can describe the modern internet. We have IP addresses, we have domain names, we have URIs, we've got ports that these things are on, and every one of those different things is a different part of the elephant, so to speak. There's a parable of the blind men in the cave with an elephant. One sees a tree trunk for the foot, one sees a snake for the tail, and so on. In many ways, when you describe an APT operation or malware just in general, we have to be very approximate about describing it. So we have to use things like IP addresses and domain names and cryptographic hashes of the files that are involved with that. And each of those is a limitation or a shadow, if you will, of the real thing. And there's also a lot of issues with using these various things that are often referred to as indicators of compromise. Just an IP address, for example. You can have a website that has an IP address and has multiple websites on it. Well, if one of those websites has bad security and is compromised and is distributing malware, maybe that entire IP address is going to be suspect. And this is a big debate. Do you filter that? Do you not filter that? At the same time, what happens if you have a good website, but that website itself is distributing malware? So you're going to someplace good, CNN, Fox, New York Times, but it's giving you malware. The website itself can have a great reputation, but it's giving you something bad. Now, if you had all this information, how do you enforce it? You could have web browser plugins. You can have sniffers that are looking at the packets. You can, try to do things at the firewall level, break and inspect. One of the issues that happens when you're collecting threat intelligence and trying to enforce threat intelligence is that you can't do break and inspect. Now, I talked about this in the virtual private nonsense video, but if you're not doing break and inspect, it's going to be hard to look inside a website, inside an email, and actually see the URLs and the other information that's in there. Now, if you are doing break and inspect, you can do some interesting things when it comes to collecting this kind of data. And this is a limitation. Not every organization's got the ability to do a full stack, recording, full stack analysis of every URL and IP address and domain name that kind of comes in and out of the network. And when you do, you run into a lot of issues. One of the issues might be that your firewalls, your zero trust networks have a minimal ability to block. If I gave you the list of like the million most bad guy IP addresses that are out there, can your firewall accept it or not? Same thing with domains, right? Can I give this to your domain provider, and can you prevent people from going to these things that we know are bad just through the use of infrastructure that's out there? This is a challenge for some organizations. For other organizations, it's pretty easy. One of the issues that when you have this kind of information coming out is how is it presented to the user? So we're going to look at the user interface of Threader here. This is their website. This is threader.com. And I'm logging into a sensor that I've got on my network here. And basically this Threader appliance sits outside my Fortinet firewall. And I've configured it using their cloud management solution to basically block a variety of countries and a variety of countries, a variety of domain names, that sort of things. I'm typically using basically what comes with Threader is they've got the Proofpoint threat feed. And I can actually log on to their cloud environment here, and I can see everything that they have on their app store here I can augment this further, if you will. And this sort of gets into a problem with threat intelligence in general. It's like, when do you have enough threat intelligence? Now, I like the idea of filtering countries that I don't like, that I kind of consider hostile. I like the idea of having a large corpus of threat intelligence that I can use and I can stop with. And that's pretty cool. But when you look at some of those issues that we talked about with false positives, with the ability to kind of look into that, how does Threader handle that? Well, one of the ways that they handle it is they have a ability to basically look at your blocked information and then do an analysis on what's been blocked And they do all this without break and inspect. So if you're in a world where you can't do like, full content inspection and that sort of thing, you can at least go through the logs and understand why things are being broken as they are. Now, one of the technologies in our stack that Threader uses is gray noise. And gray noise is another company that produces threat intelligence, and it actually tries to be very, very proactive with the world out there and trying to give away really good threat intelligence, but also amazing commercial solutions. They typically do honeypots. They're looking for scanners. They're looking for people trying to break into things. They offer early warning of that. You can just type in IP addresses. I'm just going to pick one at random. This is always dangerous, 2.3.4.5. We'll just do a search on that. And so great, further investigation. Right? I didn't pick that up. But this gets into an interesting point here. I'm interested in this IP. A lot of times when organizations are using threat intelligence, their act of what they're searching is actually something that goes into the threat feed, right? When people are hunting for these new things out there, they kind of go into that. But what I really wanted to show about Gray Noise is they have a solution called Riot. And this is sort of like the opposite of a threat feed. This is sort of like a known good list. Where does Salesforce keep all of its IP address and domain names? Where does Amazon infrastructure? Where is those things? And this allows vendors like Threader to kind of craft sort of a good guy, bad guy list and really try to minimize that whole false positive, false negative of what is out there. And so I hope that was kind of interesting to folks. The second thing I want to talk about when it comes to threat feeds and just threat intelligence in general is this concept of prioritization. And boy, there's a lot of debate on this topic. There's a really lot of debate on this topic. I went to one of the first or second MITRE ATT&CK conference. MITRE ATT&CK is a great framework for understanding all the different TTPs, all the things people can do outside of an IOC, lateral movement, privilege escalation, that sort of things. And what I saw a presentation was that somebody would take the APT groups and then they would then flag which MITRE ATT&CK TTPs, which MITRE ATT&CK things they did. So then someone could go to their organization and basically look and see, do I have coverage in my, my SOAR, my SIM, my EDRs and whatnot? Do I have coverage with that? And a lot of people were saying thumbs up. I was doing this a long time ago, and we were not doing it like that. We were doing it with correlating vulnerabilities with intrusion detection alerts. Way back in the late 90s, early 2000s, somebody had this problem of, the IDS, the network IDS, have too many alerts coming out of it. So we decided to look for attacks going to known vulnerable systems, or even just, Windows attacks going to Windows computers. That type of vulnerability correlation was a filter, if you will, but it was a sort of prioritization. I had a lot of people say, look, if I'm dealing with a mountain of alerts, that's really helpful. And again, if I'm dealing with a mountain, I can't fix all my stuff. I can't cover every TTP out there. I have to prioritize. And this is where it gets into this political discussion and this really philosophical discussion of threat prioritization. When I talk to a lot of well-funded and advanced CISOs that are out there, they say you can't prioritize. You have to have coverage. If you don't have coverage, you are going to eventually have a bad day. And, then the people who don't have the ability to kind of do that, they have to prioritize. And I think if you're watching this video and you're going, wait, I'm prioritizing, I don't have the resources to cover everything, you are part of the have-nots. Now, I tried to add sort of my 2 cents on top of the cyber poverty line. I've done videos in the past where I said, look, if you have cyber hygiene and you're hunting, you're above the cyber poverty line. You're basically above most people. But if you're only have cyber hygiene and you're not hunting, or if you're only hunting and you don't have cyber hygiene, you've got a ways to go. The reality now is I'm starting to feel like when I meet CISOs who have their act together and their programs together, one of the qualities I see is they are not doing prioritization. Do they have a threat program? Yes. Do they hunt? Yes. But are they waiting because they can't do all the things they want to do? Are they then trying to emphasize things by prioritizing them with threat intelligence? The ones who are running their programs with that, they are always behind. They're always having incidents. And look, there's some organizations like that out there. And I'm not trying to criticize one way is better than another way. I'm trying to help you as the viewer here. If you're in a program and you're constantly prioritizing what I can and can't fix based on the threat intelligence, that's just another way to kind of minimize which fires you're putting out. And hopefully you can use that realization to go to your management, get more funding, and so on. All right, the third thing I wanted to comment on is threat feed creation. Now, I've got a couple different viewpoints on this. One is, and I'll talk about this as an investor in a second, we get pitched a lot of companies who they curate threat feeds, they have a proprietary way to create a threat feed, and they want to then bring that out to the world. Now, a lot of people who do these threat feed creations, they have some sort of sensor. If you look just across the Gula Tech portfolio, right, knowing the output from Conceal, for example, at the browser plugin, knowing the output from DNS Filter, who's doing those lookups, right? Trinity Cyber, right? You see all those attacks from full content inspection. You could imagine that every one of those companies could be producing a threat feed, and based on basically monitoring their customers and seeing what activity is going on out there. Now, another way threat feeds happen is that people are doing researchers, right? I've been to a lot of conference. I've seen people present from Sophos, from Mandiant, from all these other kind of places, and they always talk about how some of the more advanced threat actors that they follow, it might take years and years to track them and follow them. Velexity is another great company I like to quote, and they're always producing good threat research. But the thing I find with talking to those threat analysts and threat researchers is they usually only have a certain piece of the puzzle. Maybe they're only deployed at 1,000 customers. Maybe they only have network flow. Maybe they're only looking at net flow from a telco point of view. Just like those 5 examples of the examples of the blind men in the cave talking to the elephant, you see a different piece of the puzzle. So the people who are doing threat creation, threat filtering, threat feed creation, so to speak, they're constantly trying to balance how much research can I do with when do I tell my customers about it? And this is a really tough moral problem because on one hand, you want to publish as soon as you know something, but on the same time, boy, if you don't get it right, maybe you got to check some other things. And a lot of these people who are really good at this stuff, they've got to check with the government first. They usually want to give a heads up to the different 3-letter agencies that are protecting us. Make sure we're not burning an operation. Make sure that we've got some things in place to fix and mitigate these things before it goes out. So it's really, really interesting. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that, look, when you are actually going and using a lot of these threat feed services, there's a little bit interesting question of whether or not you want to be openly querying certain types of things. Like, let's say you have a bad day and you've got Chinese malware on your network, and it's going to be pretty well known that you're compromised. Well, if you start querying and going to these places, if you're using a threat feed service where your queries indicate that those IOCs are on your network, man, that's tough. That can be a tough thing. More and more as we professionalize this cyber industry into this like data care industry, people who are taking care of our data like that and hunting for us, they're almost going to be like lawyers or doctors in that you have this client attorney privilege, so to speak, where hopefully they're not going to be taking that data and disclosing it accordingly. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is investing in these threat intelligence companies. And you might think that when we get a pitch, we meet some former NSA, some former intelligence DoD people, and they've got a new way to come up with threat feed creation, threat feed propagation. You might think that we'd be all over that. But the reality is it's a tough business to grow a business in. It's an easy business to come up with a new way to do things. It's a hard way to do it from a business point of view. And why is that? Well, one, the threat intelligence feed is dominated by a wide variety of companies that are really well funded, that can process threat data and can basically produce threat data. If you look at companies like Anomaly, you look at companies like Threat Connect, these are pretty much the tip of the iceberg, or tip of the spear, if you will, of companies that can consume threat data, talk about it on their customers' network, and really try to come up with answering the questions of, am I covered and what do you have out there? At the same time, companies that produce threat intel, Flashpoint, Recorded Future, which was just acquired by MasterCard, Intel 471, and like dozens and dozens of other folks, even people like Gray Noise, which I mentioned before. One of the things that happens with these organizations is they become sort of drowning in their own sort of production of data. And I've tried to sort of pitch, when somebody comes to us and says, hey, I've got a new way to find, Russian botnets or, maybe Chinese APT. I'll bring that to a wide group of people because I'm always thinking about potential customers, potential acquirers. And 99% of the time when I bring amazing new technology like that to a potential CISO as a customer or a potential acquirer, I kind of get the, look, that's cool. Maybe we thought about that. Maybe it didn't work. Maybe it really did something. I kind of get the, I'm not going to say not invented here. I'm just going to say it's not going to move the needle for those people. So as a potential investor, even though I want to see the best threat intelligence kind of produced and given out there, it's tough sometimes to come up with a reason to invest that makes sense, especially when there's so many other companies out there giving away the threat feeds for free, trying to kind of, see what they can do to give back to the community. It's a very interesting time for doing that. Now, I'm not saying if you got a great idea for threat intelligence creation, not to give us a call and get some feedback, but it's an interesting time to be doing that sort of stuff. All right. So having said that, look, 4 different things. If you're using threat intelligence technology, trying to get this deployed can be tough. Really recommend that you look at Threader for doing enforcement. And if you don't have something like Gray Noise in your stack, you really should think about that for not only the latest attack info, latest vulnerability info, but also the Riot database where you can get to see kind of what's good before it's been compromised. Now, if you're actually using the threat for prioritization like we talked about, that might be a losing gamble. It's probably better than nothing. It's probably great, as much greater than nothing. But you're always going to be in a world of prioritization, and just having coverage of all the threats is better than nothing, like I said. But look, it's not full coverage. It's too easy. It's too easy for threat attackers to change their tactics and come after you, right? Third thing, of course, if you're creating this threat intelligence, it's a complex process. There's a lot of different ways to do about it. If you're interested in that sort of stuff, it's a great career because you're going to help, your research you do could be, helping thousands, if not millions of people around the world be safe. And then lastly, look, I know it sounds like a negative thing, like we don't want to do threat intelligence company investing, but look, there's a lot of great companies out there already. The bar is really high for threat intelligence startups to be able to create something that's worthwhile and can make an impact on the market. All right. I hope you enjoyed Bring Out Your Logs. I hope you enjoyed checking out the Replicant chat on Steam. And most of all, I hope you enjoyed this video and sharing my thoughts about threat intelligence and what you can do in your organization. I'm Ron Gula, Gula Tech Adventures. Have a great week.